Tonight at 10, the Prime Minister says improving the business environment and the national economy's competitiveness is an utmost priority and calls for carrying out relevant reforms. 5 more people are detained in Belgium, but the prime suspect in the Paris attacks remains at large. French jets strike Daesh targets in Iraq, and Iraq's northern airspace is closed to all flights due to Russia's air campaign in neighboring Syria. Good evening and welcome to the 10 o'clock news. Prime Minister Abdullah Mansour chaired a meeting for the National Council on Competitiveness and Innovation to discuss the Doing Business 2016 report in terms of regulatory quality and efficiency. The meeting tackled reforms being carried out to improve the business environment in the kingdom, as Jordan ranked 117th among 189 countries in the 2015 Ease of Doing Business report, released annually by the World Bank. Mansour said this issue should be given utmost priority. He stressed that the government, the private sector and civil society institutions have the shared role to achieve this objective. Minister of Planning and International Cooperation, Imad Fakhoury, said today's meeting is the latest in a series of gatherings held earlier this year to review ways to improve the business environment. Belgium detained 5 more people following raids in the Brussels and Liège regions as it searched the country's links to the deadly Paris attacks. The Federal Prosecutor's Office said it carried out 5 raids in the Brussels area and 2 around the eastern city of Liège. Here's more.
27 raids and 21 arrests, but no sign of Belgium's prime suspect in the Paris attacks, Salah Abdeslam. The raids were carried out as Belgian authorities maintained their highest terror alert in the capital for a 3rd straight day. Federal Prosecutor Eric van der Siept said 19 raids were carried out in Molenbeek and other suburbs of Brussels, and 3 raids were carried out in other cities.
The Federal Prosecution's Office and the Brussels investigating judge specialized in terrorist cases ordered a total of 19 house searches in the Brussels region. These searches took place in Sint-Jans-Molenbeek, Anderlecht, Jette, Schaarbeek, Sint-Lamprecht-Woluwe and Vorst. There were also 3 house searches carried out in Charleroi.
Security was also stepped up elsewhere in Europe. German police were carrying out controls at the Belgian border, checking all cars arriving from Belgium as part of an operation to find Abdeslam. Some of the searches were conducted by special forces who blocked streets in Molenbeek. Extra security was also posted outside the house of Salah's brother, Mohammed Abdeslam, in Molenbeek's Place Communal. About 100 police, soldiers and special forces were deployed, and in at least one location in Molenbeek, a helicopter flew overhead. Prime Minister Charles Michel said the city of 1.2 million would remain on Belgium's 4th and highest level of security threat, meaning the threat of an attack was serious and imminent. Belgium has been at the heart of investigations into the Paris attacks after law enforcement bodies said 2 of the suicide bombers had lived there. Hibal Atoum for the news at 10.
French jets struck Daesh targets in Iraq, taking off from the Charles de Gaulle aircraft carrier for the first time. The military said on Twitter that 2 targets had been destroyed without elaborating. France's Defense Minister Jean-Yves Le Drian said earlier that the flagship of the French Navy deployed to the Eastern Mediterranean to back France's involvement in airstrikes in Iraq and Syria would be fully operational from today. French President François Hollande also said last week France would step up its attacks against Daesh targets in Syria. Meanwhile, Iraq closed its northern airspace to all flights for at least 2 days due to military traffic from Russia's air campaign in neighboring Syria. The closure was expected to affect domestic commercial routes to Erbil and Suleymaniye, as well as international flights from Turkey, Jordan, the Gulf and Austria. A spokesman for the US-led coalition, which launches reconnaissance and resupply flights from Erbil, said all military traffic had also been halted. The head of the Syrian National Coalition has warned that Russian involvement in his country is akin to war crimes. Speaking at a news conference in Istanbul, Khaled told reporters 550 civilians died as a direct result of Russian airstrikes. Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry said it was possible to broaden cooperation with Russia on Syria. But Kerry said such a move should not deter opposition groups trying to topple Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. Kerry met Abu Dhabi Crown Prince Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan and later held talks with Saudi Foreign Minister Adel Al Jubair on ways to bring Syrian opposition groups together at a conference in Riyadh next month. Divisions among Syrian opposition factions are often cited as one of many obstacles facing diplomatic efforts to end the conflict. A U.S. official said recent attacks with chlorine and mustard gas on the battlefield in Syria show that the use of chemical weapons in the civil war is becoming routine. Raphael Foley said reports by the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons showed that the Syrian regime has continued to use chemical weapons despite its obligations under the Chemical Weapons Convention. Meanwhile, Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, who is in conflict with a range of rebel groups, including Islamists, said Syria's government must remain secular. Assad gave his vision of his country's future in an interview with China's Phoenix TV channel and aired recently.
Well, about the future of Syria is mainly the political system, parliamentarian, presidential, semi-presidential, federal, confederal, and so on. But the most important thing for us and for me, that the constitution and the whole system and the country in general should be secular. Secular doesn't mean against religion. Secular means the freedom of religions. It's the system that can include every religion, followers, every sect, and every ethnicity under one umbrella, which is the Syrian umbrella.
Iran's supreme leader said at a meeting with the Russian President Vladimir Putin in Tehran that U.S. policies in the region were a threat to both countries and called for closer ties between Tehran and Moscow. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei spoke at a meeting on the sidelines of the Gas Exporting Countries Forum Summit in Tehran. Putin said at the summit that future consumers of natural gas should share investment risks related to capital expenditures in the sector with producers. The conference marks Putin's first to Tehran since 2007, a sign of warming ties between Moscow and Tehran. Iran is hosting the summit in preparation for the lifting of Western sanctions next year under the terms of a nuclear deal struck in July. Tehran has recently strengthened ties with Moscow, which is considering providing 2 loans worth a total of $7 billion to Iran. British Prime Minister David Cameron announced his country will invest an extra £12 billion in defence equipment over the next 10 years, including 9 Boeing submarine hunting aircraft. Cameron will set out a 5-year defence and security plan to Parliament focused on making sure Britain is able to respond to a variety of threats, including the rise of Daesh militants, the crisis in Ukraine and cyber attacks. Writing in a Telegraph newspaper, the British leader said the government would invest in new surveillance drones and make a joint investment with France in developing unmanned combat air vehicles. Cameron will make the case to bomb Daesh targets in Syria to Parliament this week, following attacks claimed by the organization in Paris, which killed more than 130 people.
Our national interest that we degrade and destroy this dreadful organization and the terror that it has brought down against not just French citizens in Paris or Russian citizens over the Sinai Desert, but also against British citizens in Tunisia and here in the United Kingdom. We have to defeat this evil.
Israeli forces shot and killed a Palestinian near Nablus in the occupied West Bank, claiming they approached soldiers with a knife. Shortly afterwards, a Palestinian stabbed and killed an Israeli settler at a petrol station in the West Bank. And in Jerusalem, 2 Palestinian girls attacked and wounded a 70-year-old man with scissors before a policeman shot them both, killing one. The attack in Jerusalem occurred in Jaffa Road, a busy downtown street. 2 Palestinian girls, one aged 14 and the other 16, used scissors to stab and lightly wound the man. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called to prepare for continued struggle. He blamed what he called incitement from social media, which he said expresses itself in shootings, knife and scissors attacks and car rammings. About 90 Palestinians and 20 Israelis have been killed in this spate of violence since October 1st. Today's incidents occurred a day before U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry was due to visit Israel and the Palestinian territories to discuss ways to try to stem the violence. Troops loyal to Yemeni President Abd Rabba Mansour Hadi clashed with Hadi forces in the war-torn city of Taiz. The two sides are fighting for control of the strategic city. One pro-Hadi fighter said he expected the Houthis to be forced out of Taiz by the end of the week. Meanwhile, Yemeni Prime Minister Khaled visited the desert province of Ma'rib, where several thousand Gulf Arab troops fighting alongside Hadi's forces are based. He met local officials, troops and residents during his brief visit. Back here at home, Her Majesty Queen Rania honored a group of schools accredited by the Royal Health Awareness Society's Health Schools program during its 10th anniversary celebration. The Healthy Schools Accreditation program was adopted in partnership with the Ministers of Health and Education as a national program to accredit schools which succeed to implement the National School Health Standards. The Queen passed by the 10th anniversary exhibition, which represents all programs implemented, including the Donor Zone, Youth Zone, Community Zone, and lastly the School Zone, where teachers and students were present. During the ceremony, Her Majesty handed out accreditation certificates, gold, silver and bronze, to 59 participating schools. The Royal Health Awareness Society is a Jordanian non-profit organization that seeks to raise the health awareness of the Jordanian society through implementing preventative public health and safety programs. Argentina's President-elect Mauricio Macri promised to correct the errors of the country's outgoing leftist government, but he urged patience while he defends his strategy to liberalize the ailing economy. The conservative Macri, who won a runoff presidential vote yesterday, inherits a fragile economy. The country's slow growth is driven by unsustainable spending, inflation is soaring, and capital controls have backfired to leave foreign reserves at a 9-year lows. Macri took immediate aim at the central bank president, calling on officials at the bank to step aside so that his government could nominate a team that it trusted. Macri, the 56-year-old mayor of Buenos Aires, ended more than a decade of ruling Peronist party rule in Sunday's election by promising to overturn the free-spending populism of outgoing President Cristina Fernandez. One polar bear at the Henry Vela Zoo in Madison, U.S. was in a winter wonderland of its own as it played in the fluffy fresh snowfall. The bear is one of the twin 3-year-olds at the zoo and is featured in the zoo's Arctic Passage exhibit. And though it's not officially winter yet, the latest snowstorm, which blanketed the Midwestern U.S. up to 20 inches across parts of the region, certainly gave the polar bear a taste of its natural habitat in the Arctic. Novak Djokovic rounded out one of the most dominant seasons in the history of tennis by winning at the ATP World Tour Finals in London with a straight sets dismissal of Roger Federer. The three-time defending champion beat his long-term rival 6-3, 6-4 at the O2 Arena, which lasted just 81 minutes. Djokovic has landed 3 Grand Slams, a record 6 Masters, 1,000 titles, and now the lucrative finale to the ATP season to cap a remarkable 2015, which he recently admitted has been his best. FC Barcelona coach Luis Enrique said he is confident Lionel Messi has fully recovered, having returned from a knee injury in the 4-0 victory over Real Madrid on Saturday. The Argentina captain had been out injured since the end of September, but Barca have coped well with strike partners Neymar and Luis Suarez in blistering form. Ahead of the Champions League Group E match against AC Roma, Enrique said Messi is looking good in training and just needs to play minutes on the field to regain his match fitness. And finally, a look at the weather forecast. It will remain relatively cold and cloudy for the rest of tonight and in most regions. Similar weather conditions continue tomorrow, while it will be pleasant in the Jordan Valley and the Dead Sea, and winds will be in easterly moderate stirring dust in the Badi regions. The Gulf of Aqaba should expect moderate conditions with northerly moderate to brisk winds and slightly choppy seas. Next are the lows and highs for tonight and tomorrow. And to close here are our top stories once again. The Prime Minister says improving the business environment and the national economy's competitiveness is an utmost priority and calls for carrying out relevant reforms. 5 more people are detained in Belgium, but the prime suspect in Paris attacks remains at large. French jets strike Daesh targets in Iraq, and Iraq's northern airspace is closed to all flights due to Russia's air campaign in neighboring Syria. And with that, we come to the end of tonight's news. I'm Lou Balkar. Thank you for watching and stay warm.